So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second day of Understanding Your Vital Nature with Dr. Monica Gelati. Before we start, we'll have a moment's silence, please. So welcome back, everyone. And yesterday, Monica took us on an overview of the vital nature. And we were introduced to the, not introduced, but basically connected with conscious presence, which has a decisive action on all our vital reactions and movements. A very decisive action. Today, I understand she's going to look at vital education, the refinement of the senses, because the vital, apart from being quite a murky creature at times, is also something that is a very considerable channel for beauty and the refinement of the aesthetic sense. So Monica is going to discuss this, I understand, today, and very much looking forward to this session very much. Over to you, Monica.
Yeah, thank you so much, James, and namaste to everyone. Welcome and good to see you again, all of you. So before we come up to the refinement of senses and education of the vital, I think it's, as James was pointing out, that vital is a part of us which is full of this energy. Now, if the energy does not get drained into the thought movement and here and there in all the naughty actions, where to put this energy? You know, what to do with this energy? And there comes the refinement of senses, that can we follow beauty? Can we follow harmony? Can we follow love? You know, so that all this energy, which is usually notorious, most often than not, like what we say monkey mind, so it's a notorious energy, can it go into skillfully into something of the beauty? You know, and that's why there was one question that I gave all of us, that do you spend some time in things like some art, some form of music, or maybe something of beauty, you know, in our life? Because that gives a proper kind of a channeling to this vital energy. So we will discuss this today, refinement of the senses, with the words of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And before that, if I may ask, anyone wants to share anything from coming from maybe the reflective worksheet or anything? Okay, so I'm assuming there is nothing at the moment. We'll just continue. And whenever we feel the need to pause in between the slides, we'll pause and we'll take up reflections. So the basic, again, I have to keep on coming to the crux of the matter, because even if I work towards refinement of the senses and become like, you know, really artistic, and if my heart is not opened, you know, it's still a long journey for me. So the basic thing is, as Mother and Sri Aurobindo say, to move from the desire soul to the true soul. Desire soul is, as we were talking yesterday, is very sticky in nature. It just keeps on demanding, wanting, expecting. It's a never ending game of this demanding that goes on, and sticking to opinions, sticking to ideas, sticking to my thoughts, feelings, sensations, everything. It's very sticky in nature, and that's why it weighs very heavy on us. That's why the suffering exists. So the whole movement is from the desire soul, knowing that we are there, recognizing the attachment, recognizing the clinging and grasping, and to move on to the true soul, which is although involved in everything and yet detached from everything. That's a beautiful way of living, coming to, again, as James was mentioning, conscious presence, knowing oneself as the conscious presence. So detaching again from the entanglement of thoughts, feelings, and sensations again and again. I think it's a journey which can never end, really. It has to be continuing journey forever. So we'll just go through the prayer. Why are we doing all this? Why are we walking on this spiritual path at all? What is the need? Would anyone like to read instead of me? Because I can also read, but it would be nice if one of you would like to experience reading this and maybe feeling it for yourself. Would anyone want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, please go ahead.
May I be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles, for the boundless multitudes of living beings. May I bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and sky, until all beings are freed from sorrow and all are awakened.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rakhi. So I cannot be a resting place for the weary if I am weary myself. And that's why I need to walk on this path. That because we see that just like the way I suffer through attachment to my own thoughts and feelings, people also suffer. So if I really want to walk on this path and be a resting place for the weary, I have to stop being weary myself. So that's the challenge. And there is a document that I'll be sharing with you later on. I'll just maybe present. Just a second. Yeah. Where Mother and Sri Aurobindo have, so I think it's words by the Mother, 4 austerities and 4 liberations. It's a beautiful little document on tapasya of love, where to put the energy. So if the energy is not going into attachment to thought, feeling, and sensations, where to put the energy rightly. So tapasya of love, tapasya of knowledge, tapasya of power, and tapasya of beauty. So I'll be putting this document on the WhatsApp group for all of us to go through, because it's a big document and we don't want to rush through it. So I'm not taking it up in this particular session. And with that, we'll just play a little kind of game where I'll show you a slide, and then I'll remove the slide and I'll be asking you something about the slide. So I'll just show you for a moment and then kind of remove it. So look at it carefully if you can, and then I'll ask the question. I hope that was enough time. Want to be a little challenging for you, right? So I don't want to make it easy. Yeah, can anyone share how many hearts were there?
4.
Okay, great. How many smileys?
4.
And how many like loops?
That was also 4.
Okay, let's look at it again. So there are 4 hearts, 3 smileys, 3 or maybe 4, yeah. and loops are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is, since we are talking about refinement of senses here, mother says that we look, but we don't look. We listen, we hear, but we don't listen. So it's amazing because most of the times the consciousness is just scattered here and there in, all the concerns. The energy is not available for really looking. And it's not only with a few of us, it's with all of us almost. We have to train ourselves so that the senses can really become refined. So let me just maybe go to another slide. Okay, look at it carefully again. Okay, I have to be fast. Don't want to give you much time. So yeah, on the left side, there was this pot, and on the right, there was this pot. So how many kind of pebbles in both, if anyone wants to share?
The
One
last one,
had 8 and one had 7, I suppose.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Anything?
on the left was 7 and on the right was 8.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
Okay. So mother says that we have to be so, we have to, that the senses can be trained so beautifully that even without calculating, the estimate is so good that you put your hand in the box and you know exactly how many pebbles you are picking up. So that's the power we can actually have if we train our senses. And in one, mother also shares that when once she was not well, she was just sitting in her room all the time. So she developed this ability for that her consciousness would go out and look into other room, what actually is happening into the other room. So such are our powers, which we rarely give any attention to, just mostly because our mind is a monkey mind and we don't care to train it. So if we begin to channelize all this energy, which now goes in here and there and concerns about me and my story, that energy can actually go into refinement of senses. And that's why I was asking in the reflective worksheet that what do we do with the time that we have? Where do we put that time? So to have more beauty in our life, to have more harmony and more precision specifically in our life. So that's also a possibility. Yeah, so now the last game for now, right now, is that I'm going to tell you a scene. If you prefer, you can close your eyes. And then I'll ask one of you to recall that scene, and we'll see how good we can recall that scene. So if you want, you can close your eyes and I'll be just kind of dictating it out what it is about. Yeah? So imagine that there is a big pond with light green water, and this pond is in a huge park. And this green watered pond also has ducks, and there are 9 ducks on the pond. And on the right side of the pond, there is a tree. It's a mango tree. And there are yellow and green mangoes hanging on the tree. 3 mangoes are on the ground beneath the tree. On the left side of the pond, there is a champa tree with white champa flowers. And there is also a bench, a green colored bench below that champa tree, beneath it. And the further we go from the pond, there is a kind of a play area for little kids. And there is a swing and a slide and a little sand pit. And there are 2 toddlers playing there. One with an orange shirt and the other one with a blue shirt. Okay, so who wants to recall the scene?
Can I try?
Yes, please. Yeah.
There's a small pond with green water. It's in the middle of a huge park. There are about 9 ducks in the park, in the pond.
Right.
On the right side is a huge mango tree. And it's loaded with yellow and green mangoes. There are 3 mangoes on the ground. Then there is a champa tree on the right hand side, and there are champa flowers on the ground. There's a bench. Um, there's a sand pit. 2 toddlers are playing. One is wearing orange t-shirt and one is wearing blue t-shirt. And I think bench is green in color.
Not bad, I would say. You added a couple of details, but that's okay. I
Is
think
it?
it's a beautiful start and missed some. Yeah. Anyone else who wants to try? Thank you, Rakhi. Thank you for trying it out. Anyone else?
Can I try?
Yes, Luna, please.
There was a huge park, and in that there was a green watered pond. There were 9 ducks, and on the right side there was a mango tree with green and yellow mangoes. 3 mangoes were on the ground. On the left hand side there was a champa tree full of white champa flowers, and beneath it there was a bench. It was also green in color. And if we go that means if we go along the pond, then we will find a play area for the kids. There was the swing, slide, and sand pit. 2 kids were playing, and one was wearing orange t-shirt and another was wearing blue t-shirt.
Yeah, I think quite appropriate. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, thank you both of you, Rakhi and Luna, for the taking up the challenge. So, again, this is just how we can use the same energy, the same vital energy, which goes into all the notorious monkey mind activities. The same can be used into, increasing, refining our own senses. Maybe actually there is another little task we can do right now itself, because then since we are at the tasks, why not do it right now? Just a second. Okay. Yeah. So if those of us who have pen and paper handy, would be nice if we can keep it. So we have to draw something. I'll put it on the screen and we have to draw something. So it's a very small, I would say, challenge. I've not made it into a kind of really professional one, because we don't know where we are, in terms of our hands. So would you like to copy this? For example, this is Snoopy, the Peanuts cartoon. And if you want to just see how well our senses work, how well our hand follows the mind and the movement of eyes, what eyes are seeing, am I able to copy it exactly, or how far I can do this? So again, refining, working on our skill. So if those of us who have time and interest, inclination, it's just here right in front of us, and we can try to put it on paper. So once we are done with it, and also see that how much into detailing we can go, that if we just have a shallow view, we miss many things, but then we look at the image more closely, and then we see that there is so much detailing that we can do. So, and if some of us would like to share it, we can put it later after the session on the WhatsApp group. We can see what we did. And again, also observe that many a times, those of us, especially who are not used to this kind of sitting and maybe copying or maybe looking at something in drawing or sketching, there is a resistance that comes up in the beginning. Something in me doesn't want to sit. Something in me is feeling a resistance to that work or whatever, the challenge. And it's okay. It's okay to be with that resistance. Let it come up, and we just don't have to follow the dictate of the resistance. We just have to allow ourselves to kind of take up the challenge. Yeah, so I'll just put it off now. I'll share it on the WhatsApp if those of us who want to maybe go into detailing and look at it closely and maybe color it also later on. Yeah. So anybody wants to share their experience? Did any resistance come up in the being while you were starting to do the sketch, or anything that you want to share?
Yes, may I?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, Binaji, please.
Yeah, I was, hesitant to start. One is I didn't have paper. I grabbed it and pen. So I was not comfortable drawing with a pen. But anyways, I did it. And I was, initially feeling embarrassed to share it. It's not come out very good. But anyways, I'm going to put it up on the group. And too many details I noticed as I started drawing. I had not seen it earlier. Earlier, first, when I saw the picture, I didn't know what we had to do. So quickly counted the craters and things like that. But then when you said that we had to draw and it's going to be there, so I was relaxed. But as I started drawing, a lot of small details I noticed.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah,
Thank
yes.
you.
And it's amazing to see that no matter in one glance, whatever we are able to see, it's never enough. When we see it again, we see that, oh my God, I missed seeing this, I missed seeing that. And slowly we can develop this capacity. We can expand this capacity of looking. And people who are, kind of into the field of art, people who are artists themselves, mother says that they have a different way of looking. The moment they look at a person, they actually see the whole figure of the person. They have exact details. Okay, this much is the, the height of the, maybe the head, and then this much is the neck. So somehow they develop, owing to the training they had, they develop this capacity of looking at the pictures in a more holistic and integral way, which we can also develop. Those of us, even if we are not artists, we can develop. And why we should develop? Because it's the same energy. If it's not channeled into something of beauty and refinement of senses, then it will actually go and create havoc. What happens with us, when we are too much into the forest of the thoughts. So, and we don't get anything there. And that's the main thing, that we don't get anything there. We are still empty-handed. So like this, we also learn to stabilize this vital energy in the body. Again, maintain a connection with the breath, because when I am drawing or sketching, you will see that you are more closer to yourself. There is an intimacy with the being, which is not there when we are lost in the domain of thoughts. Yeah, so anyone else wants to share anything?
Hi.
Yeah.
I was noticing how the first thought that came into my mind when you said we had to draw it was like, oh no, it was the lowest mark I ever got at school. It was always the lowest grade, and thought, oh, I can't. And then I was like, no, I'm going to do it. It's a workshop, and I never have to show it to anybody. And then I noticed that actually, also I had a pen and paper ready to write, so I only had a pen, and I was actually really surprised that I kind of blew that story, that I can't draw, because even though it was a simple, what you called a simple drawing, for me, it seemed quite complicated, and it turned out rather well, and I'm ready to share it, so I'm quite impressed. And it was a lot of fun. And I agree with you that it did keep my mind very focused, which is very nice. Not to wander. It was a nice kind of meditation and a very fun one to do too.
Yeah, beautiful, very powerful. Yes. So Lotus is sharing, initially I got the goggles wrong, over eyes instead of on top of Snoopy's head. Missed his front zipper, wrong position of his bird friend at the chest level. Missed the point on the satellite. I'm sure, Lotus, you did many things right also. So not just to look at whatever we didn't do right, but yeah, I understand what you're saying, that there is so much that we can work upon. There is a lot of improvement that we can, as Mother says, that perfection is a continuing journey. Musicians who are into music for all their life, towards the end of their life, they are saying that maybe I could have learned more. So that's the beauty of perfection, that it is a never ending road. So we always have employment whenever we are, into something, refining our own self as a human being also, and whatever our capacities are. Yeah, anyone else wants to share? Okay, great. So I applaud all of you for trying this out. I think it really, especially when we become adults, we, as Swapna was sharing, that we have so much of limitations in our head, while little children are always ready to try. So as Mother says, that we should always have a young, we should always be young at heart. Young child should always be alive in us. So that's really very beautiful if all of us were able to kind of challenge ourselves with this. So we'll go ahead with the refinement of the senses, and we'll pause in between for taking any reflections in between or questions. So, yeah. So Mother says, of all the education of the vital is perhaps most important and also indispensable, but it's rarely taken up. As James was sharing yesterday, that Sri Aurobindo and Mother actually gave a very beautiful structure for us to follow. They had, very detailed information of parts of our being, so that we can actually take up the training of the vital also. Why is it the training of vital not taken up, education of the vital? Because human thinking is in great confusion over what concerns, okay, what is to be trained, what really is to be trained. I don't have a very clear view, and this enterprise is very difficult. And why it needs an endless persistence if you want to really train the vital being in us, the vital nature in us, which is full of emotions, feelings, power, force. Why? Because most often than not, we are not detached. I am the emotion. It's my emotion. I have to feed it. So there is so much of clinging to my own feelings and emotions that we can forget about the training. I can only train something which is at a little distance from me. Like maybe I have to learn a car. So car is something separate from me. So I can train myself in driving car. So there is a contact also, but there is a separation also. So for us to dissociate from the emotions is something which is very, very difficult. That's why it's called the path of a warrior. It's very hard to dissociate from the egoistic state, which is the very clingy state of me and my emotions and me and my story. Also, Mother says that vital is despotic and it's tyrant. It holds within itself a lot of power, as we saw all the power that we channeled into drawing or maybe counting, energy, enthusiasm. But most often than not, since it is the mood, the mood goes up and down if we are not following the dictates of the vital. That's why one has a respect for it, that if I don't follow the emotion, then my mood will go down. So because I don't want my mood to go down, so better follow the dictate of the vital, as if we have no control over what is making the moods go up and down. So that's why we have a timorous respect. We become very timid in front of this energy of emotions, timorous respect for it, and try always to please it. Even people who are around us, many a times it happens that if there are people around us who are mostly angry, we will have a very timid character in front of them, and we would not like to invoke their anger. And that if I say this, maybe the person becomes angry again, right? So because we don't want that overwhelm of intensity of energy, and that's why it's hard for us to train it, owing to this energy, the powerhouse that it is. And mother says that two ideas contribute towards making this domination of vital even more. The two ideas that persist in the society are, one, the goal of life is to be happy. And mother says that it's a distortion of a basic truth that all the existence is based on the delight of, the delight of existence. Mother Sri Aurobindo says that the existence is based on the delight of the being. We would not be here if the delight would be absent. And that's why when we are actually too much involved in the suffering, we are having even there a juice of suffering, a rasa is there, which we call dukh ras. Without the delight, it is impossible for me to be in suffering. And my suffering can only end when I have a better rasa in life. So I stop to have the rasa of suffering, the juice of suffering. I have had it enough. And now I have a better direction in my life where I have good juice, good rasa, the delight is there. So I begin to follow that rather than the suffering which I was following earlier. Sometimes we put our own selves into depression. We fuel our depression, we fuel our suffering because we are having a certain delight in it. So this idea that the goal of life is to be happy. So I would eat as much as I can because I want to be happy. So this is the distorted version. While the idea is that if we get in touch with our true being, if we open our heart, open the locks of our heart, if we go out from the egoistic state of consciousness, we are genuinely happy. So that's the happiness that we are seeking, this genuine, lasting happiness, which now no one can take away from me. But what we make it into, that buy this and then you will be more happy. Invest into this, then you will be more happy. Buy two more properties, you will be much happier. So have this promotion and that promotion, you will be much happier. And that never happens. It's always a fleeting, temporary happiness that we get there. So the idea is can we get in touch with the genuine source of happiness in us? Right? So first is this deformation of the truth. Other is that we are born with a certain character and it is impossible to change it. So all of us know how difficult it is to change our character. And mother says that it's very hard to change one's character. We will come to character transformation later. Why? Because it requires a lot of detailed observation of my own likings, preferences. What am I like? How do I react? What are my thought patterns like? What are my emotional patterns like? So I have to become very, very microscopic towards myself. And it's hard to do that because we have to face the crust of the ego. We have to face this wall of the egoistic consciousness. Ego does not want anyone to look at it. And that's why in unconscious living, ego can have its way. But when we become conscious of our patterns and movements, then it is impossible that I am still following the wrong movements. Right? So it requires a lot of scrutiny and discernment. When I look at my own character, it's much easier to look at somebody else's character. And we do that all the time. We are always full of opinions and judgments about how other people are. But when other people talk about us, we become a little, not really ready for that. So can I become my own microscope? And can I have the capacity becoming this conscious presence, knowing myself as this conscious presence that looks at things, look at my own thought patterns, emotional patterns, what is ruling me, and what exactly I would like the inner space to be. Then the sorting can happen, then the organization can happen, and then even the character can change with a lot of grace. So these are the two ideas which contribute to the domination of the vital forces on our life. One is that we pursue happiness, which is mostly temporary happiness. And the other is that we don't want to really change our character. We feel that it's too hard. And mother says that it's possible. It's possible to make your character more mellow, more supple, and more flexible and wide and expansive. That can be done. Yeah. And mother says that the goal of the life is not to secure personal happiness. This little me and my story should be happy, but to awaken the individual progressively towards truth consciousness. So more and more, I have to become stabilized, living as that conscious presence in me. The meditation that we were doing yesterday. And it's just a matter of getting a hang of it. We have to sit daily, knowing ourselves, those 10, 15, 20 minutes, even 1 hour, those of us who can sit, knowing ourselves as this conscious presence, so that we can carry out this into the whole of the day. It would be much difficult for me to slip into the rush of anger or jealousy or hate or blame if I am spending the initial morning 20, 15 minutes knowing myself as the conscious presence. So the detaching becomes much easier and simpler. So practice makes a huge difference here. And the second idea, I think we already discussed, that it feels that it is very difficult to change one's character, but it's not so. It's not so. All the previous vrittis, sanskaras, tendencies coming not from this lifetime, even from the previous lifetime, everything has the power to change. You know, we remember this story of Angulimal, who was this, you know, the Daku in this forest, and he would torture people and cut their fingers, and, you know, then he would put the necklace in his neck. And once Buddha was walking through that forest, and he tried to stop Buddha, and he said that, "Ruk, you know, thair ja." And Buddha said, "Main to thair gaya, when will you stop? You know, tu kab thairega?" And suddenly he became really, you know, startled that who is this being who is not getting frightened with me, you know, me who is this awful person. So, and then he's completely changed his life. You know, he became disciple and he became arhat, and life changed for him. So this awakening to our true being can happen at any point of time, no matter what extreme kind of a sinner you may be. So we don't have to keep on counting our sins, because this pristine true nature which is there, it is always held preciously safe. In Savitri, there are these lines that something saves this precious character that is there in us, which is the psychic being. It is always safe, no matter how many crimes I may have done. So we can always take a U-turn back. So the idea is to get in touch with that conscious presence within, know myself as that, so that I can exert some influence, because consciousness has force also. I can exert some mastery over my own thoughts, my own feelings, and my own way of living. Yeah. So education of the vital then concerns with two principal aspects. First is to refine the senses, to develop and utilize the sense organs. Now, this is the beauty about Mother and Sri Aurobindo. They don't talk about shunning the senses, as the ascetics may say, you know, that since senses are responsible for all the kaleshas, let me shun away the senses. I will not touch any person. I will not, you know, be with any relationship. I will not touch any money. So it's shunning away, you know. But that is not how Mother and Sri Aurobindo take it. Mother and Sri Aurobindo talk about refining the senses, to go to parallelly know ourselves as this conscious presence, and to then use the tools of the senses towards more beauty, more harmony, more aesthetic sense. So to develop and utilize the sense organs, and to become conscious and gradually master of one's character, and in the end to achieve its transformation. I think that's the most difficult task, that you're born with a character and then you end up with a certain suppleness and some purified kind of a refined version of your character. So that's something which can happen in this lifetime. It's not that हमारे लिए कोई hope नहीं है, you know, we all have hope. We all have that lightened presence within us. And whenever we get in touch with that presence, whenever we identify with that presence, we always can exert some or the other influence on our life and the patterns of thought and emotions. So this can happen within this lifetime. We don't have to wait for another one. This sense education, as we were talking about, it's a lifelong process. No matter how good a musician I may be, there is always I can do better. No matter how good an artist I may be, there always is a scope for doing better. So that's beautiful, because then one is never unemployed. I always have something to learn. I always have something to progress forward to. Yeah, and I think this was what I was sharing with you earlier, that mother would extend her physical consciousness, widen it, getting in touch with even the other room. What are the things in the other room? Where is everything placed? So if we use that energy, which goes mostly outwardly scattered in consciousness, if we collect it, then this energy can actually awaken the powers that are hidden within us. We all have equal capacities, depending on our inherent inclinations. Somebody may be a good dreamer, and hence can do dream yoga. Someone can be, maybe someone is good at dance, so a good kind of movement of body and connection with the breath and artistic expression through the body. So it depends on everyone's natural capabilities also, in which direction to put my energies in. And this only we can know for ourselves, because we are big enough. And if we are scrupulous and with a lot of scrutiny, we look at ourselves, which are the things which I am naturally good at, and nurture those seeds, then it becomes easy for me to know which direction I should channelize this vital energy to. There was this meditation that I wanted to do, but we can also do it later, or maybe now. I don't really mind. Yeah, I think we can do it later. Yeah, we'll just continue with a few slides more. So this is what we were, again, I touched upon this earlier, that when we are looking, we are not really looking. When I'm making food, I'm not really making food. When I'm talking to a friend, I'm not really talking to a friend. I'm thinking what he's thinking about me. Many a times it happens that you're meeting a person for the first time, and all that you're absorbed in thinking is what the other person thinks about me. So we are actually not meeting the person. We are just in our own images and thoughts. So mother says that where is the difference between listening and hearing, for example, looking and seeing, where is the difference? And mother says perhaps in a little more presence, a little extra consciousness that transmutes everything. So the more I take a stance at this as the conscious presence, which again and again I refer back to that meditation that we were doing. And it's good if we don't have already a practice, and if we want to make it a practice, even for 10 minutes, identifying myself as that conscious presence. Because when I am interacting with a person as that conscious presence, I'm just available fully to look or listen to what the person may be sharing. I'm not lost here and there, and I'm not wanting to know what the other person thinks about me, right? So mother says that extra, this drop of consciousness transmutes everything. And we see people, in our own life, even those of us who are here, there are few things which we do with a lot of grace, and there are others which we don't do with much of grace. We kind of do it ki karna hai to kar lete hain, like kar diya. So this extra little drop of consciousness, if we can put into all that we do and whatever we are even feeling, then it shifts our consciousness. It changes the game. We are not in the trap of egoistic consciousness anymore. We are expanding in our consciousness. Yeah, and mother then also adds here that it gives the thing an intuitive something. So you are doing something, you are there with your full consciousness, and you have given your special touch, your intuitive touch to that, whatever little thing that you are engaged in. It may be anything. It may be even mopping the floor. Doesn't matter. So it's good if we observe how we do things. Yeah. And as I was sharing earlier, again, touched upon this, that artists would see things differently, and a layman would see things differently. The moment an artist see a tree, his perception of tree would be a completely different perception of how I would look at tree. I would miss the whole logistics, the whole aesthetic sense of the tree. What kind of leaves are there, how far and wide it is stretching, what are the roots like. But when the artist looks, he also looks at the colors, how many kinds of greens are there, how many kinds of browns are there, what kinds of patterns, venation is on the leaves. But I don't look at, because I am always lost in my thoughts. So we all of us have the capacity to be artists in our own domain. And why not put the energy, the same vital energy which goes and plays havoc in the mind, the same energy will be channelized here. Why not put the energy there? So it's all a matter of practicing and learning and practicing. And the same goes with hearing, smelling, tasting, to be totally there. What we also call many a times as to be mindful about whatever we are doing. Yeah, and then Mother shares that whenever we are looking at things, a part of us is looking at things, and the other part is actually judging parallelly. So in that, we falsify the perception. So to have a clear view of whatever I am looking at, like if I am looking at a human being, I'm not looking with my judgments, with the filter of my judgments towards the human being, but I'm just looking. Is that possible? And also to catch ourselves whenever we are looking with a filter of judgments. Most of the times we do that. And half of our energy goes into judgments and all. That we have a filter as if there is a snow in front of me and I'm looking at the snow through yellow colored goggles. So I will never be able to look really at the snow because the snow is not yellow really. So can I look at my own way of seeing and see that it's always full of these filters, and hence the perception is not an authentic perception. It's always falsified by feelings and thoughts and judgments and ideas and morals and whatever. Yeah. So just to be aware of it, just to be conscious of it. And then towards the end, Mother says that it is only when you have conquered all attraction and repulsion. So I am not hating anything. I am not magnetically pulled towards anything. Like there is no preference per se, what we call samata, equanimity. It is only when you have conquered all attraction and repulsion that you can have a correct judgment. Now, this again connects us to taking stance as the conscious presence within us. Because if I know myself as that consciousness, full and complete and whole and integral in itself, then the way I'll be using my senses, would be a way which would be not distorted by my likings and preferences. So it almost becomes essential for me again and again to come back to my true nature. Because without that, whatever I will be seeing would be distorted by my own likings and preferences. I would not even know that. We would not get to know that because we are not conscious enough. But the more I take stance as this whole and integral conscious presence, which is all wise, all compassionate, then I would not need the other person or thing to run according to my dictate because I already have the fullness. So now the falsification of perception is not needed because I'm not looking for completion through my senses. Usually whenever we eat with a lot of greed and desire. We rarely eat with a kind of equanimity. Like I am eating because this is needed for my body and, hence I'm offering this food to my body. So if I take stance as this integral conscious presence, then whatever I do will not be falsified by my own desires, greed, and ambition. And then only I can come to samatha or equanimity. Otherwise, I will always be repulsed by something, or I will always be attracted towards something. What we do in usual life, dualistic life, running towards pleasure, running away from pain. So wherever pain is, discomfort is, I don't want to go there. Wherever pleasure is, let me go there. But when I find the ultimate pleasure, taking a stance as my true being, then I would not run for external pleasures. Then I would not torture my relationships for, you give me happiness. I have done so much for you, you give me happiness. So it becomes absolutely essential if we even want to have beautiful relationships where we are not torturing each other, that you fulfill my demands and I would succumb to your demands. We say that I am fulfilled in me, I am content in me, and whatever I can offer, I will offer. It's an offering, it's a spilling, rather than always having this sense of lack and wanting. Yeah. So coming to, Mother Sri Aurobindo and Mother talk about art and poetry also, that if we involve ourselves in art, poetry or something, it really helps us to go forward to beauty and love and harmony, rather than that energy again spilling itself out in every direction. Yeah. So anything so far, anyone, anything to share, any question, any reflection, or maybe it's too much. I hope it's not too much. I don't want to give too much at once. Yeah, anyone who wants to share anything?
Yes, Monica.
Yeah, please.
Sophie. Patanjali Yoga mentions in the first part how to develop the senses nerves, right? That can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. Yes. So, for as if we have channels in our being, what Sophie was mentioning, and those channels need to constant cleaning, just like we have drains in our home, and they from time to time they have the tendency to get blocked. So what you were referring, any kind of breath work, and even again and again coming back to the breath throughout the day, staying consciously with at times deep breathing and at times the regular breathing, it helps us to unclog those channels that become blocked from time to time. This is what we call, nadi shodhana, also chitta shuddhi. The mind is purifying itself of all the blocks that are there, the previous blocks, all the attachments that are there. And when we come back again and again to the breath, rather than losing ourselves into the thought stream, then we see that something in us becomes purified. We become more lighter. The breath also takes a different form. It becomes more flowy. So that really helps, what Sophie just shared. Any kind of breath work. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Any reflections? Any comments?
Yeah, and just one thing, if you can also elaborate. Now, what about multitasking? Because sometimes time demands doing a couple of things together. And if that is the demand of the situation, how do you handle that?
Yeah, beautiful. Yes. So Abhijit, the premise before the question is that whenever I'm doing anything with total consciousness, it appears to us that I am doing only one thing at a time. But I think that's just not the real thing. And as far as for example, I see my own life, I do, again, as you were saying, multitasking, and mother was doing so much, she was meeting people, replying to sadhaks all the time, and also looking forward, taking care of all the ashram activities. So I personally feel, and you're welcome, all of us, to share reflections. I feel that the more I take stance as conscious presence, I become more fluent with multitasking. Like, it doesn't bother. because nothing is weighing heavy, nothing is attaching onto the mind. So it's a very light kind of a living, very flowy kind of a living. And hence I can right now maybe take a session and then go attend the child and then, maybe look at something into the kitchen. Why? Because nothing is sticking. How we live is usually, in ordinary level of consciousness, everything sticks. So if I'm in the session and the moment I'm out of it, the moment I'm away from the seat, something from the session is sticking, right? So when I go into the kitchen, I'm actually not in the kitchen, I'm still in the session. So that ways I would not be able to be fully there. But I have felt personally, and please share reflections if you have also felt, I feel that the more I take stance knowingly as becoming aware of being aware, like taking stance as this conscious presence, I see that things fall off me, like there is less burden on my head. So it's very easy to multitask. And being mindful or being aware or being conscious does not mean that when I'm eating, I'm just eating. It doesn't mean like that, because many a times things demand, attention. And it's not possible that if there is a fire in the house, I can't, get away from the seat because I'm eating mindfully. So it's not possible. Fire is an exaggerated example, but still.
If, for example, like doing some work, maybe your profession or doing something serious, but at the same time listening to music, does it justify? Because it's one thing doing something with the whole of the being, doing with the whole heart, and it's another thing you're listening to the music, maybe mother's organ, are playing, and then you're doing or writing something, you are replying to an email, at the same time you have a background, music, and music that you love. But then you cannot, if you don't concentrate on the music, then you're not getting the full out of it. So is that recommended to do? Or, when you're working, you do only the work. When you're listening to music, then you only listen to the music. How do you go about it?
Not really. I would say whatever works for each one of us. I think, again, as we say, truth is not a formula, right? Truth is not a dogma, which I can apply to each situation. For someone, it may be actually very fruitful to listen to some background mother's music and do the office work. For someone, that music may become distracting, right? So I think it's completely very personal. Whatever really works for us, and only I would know. Only I would know that whether I'm able to do it well like this or maybe like that. So that's what I would say. I think there is no particular formula we can use here. Whatever works for us, and we would know whatever is working. So to trust that knowing also, because only we know. Yeah.
No, while cooking, if we are listening to an audio book, so it's I tend to multitask a lot. I cannot do one thing, but I don't feel that I'm not consciously present in doing both the things. But I'm not sure. I keep asking myself that why is this the need? I mean, is it because of some kind of hyperactivity, or just that distracted mind which needs to be stimulated by 2-3 different things simultaneously, or I don't know.
Yeah. So I think the idea is that there is a lot of vital energy in us, right? And at times the jobs are not really challenging enough. So what I do is I give myself a further challenge. So I call it multitasking. That people, especially people who have a lot of vital force, lot of vital energy, I have seen that, again, just personally reflecting, that it is possible to do 10 things at a time and to do 10 of them well. It is possible, because you are putting a drop of consciousness wherever you are engaged in. So I think as long as I know where I am internally, and I know that it's fulfilling in nature, whenever I do things like that, it's fulfilling in nature. It connects me with my own inner being. I don't see there is anything which can be called as wrong or right. Again, mother says that morality is away from truth. Morality is far away from truth. So there are no really dogmas and formulas. In whatever way I feel good, internally I feel fulfilled and content. And I also feel that, yes, this is the best worthy way of use of time that I am doing. I think follow that inner guidance within. Yeah.
Yeah, but Monica, to be sincere, and
Yeah.
I think one has to give 100% to what he's doing. If one is looking at a thing or hearing to something, and if one needs to give 100%, that is not possible if someone is trying to do multitasking. So
you are saying that in your experience, if you are doing two things at a time, it appears a bit difficult, right?
it has to be true with everyone. You cannot give your 100% if you're doing two things, at the same time.
And
You cannot all your heart.
Right. And what do you mean when you say 100%?
It's your full attention to the best of one's ability. If you're listening to something, and then if you're writing, you're concentrating, trying to give your 100% to that thing.
Yeah.
But if you're doing both things together, then you're compromising. You're not sincere. You're not giving 100% to the thing you're doing.
Right.
I look that way. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you have something churning up in the mind, and definitely it's worth attending. And I also feel that this 100% that we talk about, if we put, as you are saying, from heart, I think you use this word, if we are not doing it from the heart, if we are in touch with that inner heart, a mother says the depths of the heart is the seat of the psychic. I think we will know the right way to do things. We will know it. So if you feel whatever you are reflecting right now in your mind, if you feel that it's not the sincere way of doing things, I think follow that inner heart's guidance. I think that's the best way to, yeah.
I think also, actually, Monica, when I used to work in the early days of Nama, I used to work with a doctor called Dr. Vandana, and she constantly had the mother's music on, 24 hours a day. And it sort of it wasn't a distraction at all. It reinforced galvanized our energy, and it actually enhanced our sense of concentration. So it depends on what sort of stimulus you're actually opening up to. And that particular type of stimulus was very constructive. So I think you have to be quite selective and discriminate what you are actually opening up to at the time. That's just my thought.
Absolutely. I think very valid that if the influence is getting more ourselves and getting in touch with our own inner being, I think welcome to that influence. Absolutely. Yeah.
I just wanted to share a small experience. I was just right now, just before we went into this topic, you were explaining things, right? But in that moment, my daughter came back from college and needed to express her things that happened the day. And I felt very comfortable while listening with one ear to what you were saying, but completely listening to her, because I think that is part of our daily experience of life. And then in any case to offer, because at the end of the day, you can only offer everything you do, whether right, wrong, or, there's no right and wrongs in that sense, So I was very comfortable. I was not feeling like I am, losing on Monica's stock just because I'm listening to my daughter, because that's something that you experience. And it is a multitasking in the sense like, this is a very important thing I'm doing, which is for me personal, for my personal upgrading, let's say. But on the other hand, my choice of being a mother is definitely comes first, like it's that offering and to offer to the divine, because at the end of the day, after I have done this or that, to the divine is the same, right? So I think we feel, as you were saying, what is the right thing in the right moment.
Absolutely. I think that's a very beautiful example, a live example, I would say. Yeah. And I think this also connects us to this sense of this spacious awareness that we connect with. So if I again and again take stance as this spacious awareness, or in other words, consciousness, we will see that, yes, as Sri Devi ji was sharing, that I can listen to it. And when that is important, I can also listen to that, and if I am actually gaining something from what I have into the ear, then it will get reflected in how I am relating in my relationships. So definitely, I think it's a very valid example that if I can be as this spacious awareness, I would be guided for whatever is the right thing to do in the right moment. Yeah. Claudia says that her cat is here needing attention. Yeah. So Lotus has typed something. I'll just read it out. Is it possible that when you are connected to source, 100% expands to be 100% of more, and so more can be allocated to different tasks? Yeah, I believe because there is less dispersion of energy, there is less distraction of consciousness into feelings, thoughts, and the forest that is there. And hence, whatever I do, I am available. This is what we call selfless living, for example. That if I have 3 tasks in front of me, because my energy is not into me and my story, right? I'm not wanting myself to complete this sense of lack that I feel within. I'm okay. I'm in an okay space. So now I can offer myself fully to whatever comes in the front. So it really is beautiful to see how, when we stop being absorbed in the drama of thoughts, how resourceful we can become. All of us, we can become really very efficient and resourceful, because the energy is not getting wasted now. It can be utilized for proper purposes. Yeah. Anyone else? Any reflection here? So shall we do a little meditation? Is this okay with everyone? Or do we want to talk? I'm open to whatever. Yeah. So this, okay. So this a little meditation, which will kind of take us again into taking stance as the conscious presence, and also to expand it, because consciousness does not have the limits of the body, right? My body has a limit, but the consciousness does not have a limit. Just like space, there is a house in my room, there is a space in my room, but when a tsunami comes and takes away the room, the space is untouched. And we also see a continuity of space. Like, it's not that this house has a different space and the other house next to it has a different space. All the space is connected. So just like that, the consciousness or the conscious divine presence, it's a continuum, it's a continuity, it's a limitless, endless continuity. And that's why we say, when we leave the body, we don't end. Right? So right now, when I have the body, and can I get in touch with this conscious, alive presence within, which makes me aware of everything that I know or see or hear or touch or taste or smell, this conscious, alive presence, and to see that it can expand and expand and expand. It is already expanded, but I am not aware of its expansion. So we'll try to kind of, go into that expansion. So let us close our eyes, taking 3 deep, long breaths, if possible, calming us down. Staying with the ingoing and outgoing breath for 21 conscious breaths. if the mind wanders away, just bring it back to the breath. All is well right now here. Everything is complete and whole. We are alive, breathing. We have a body which can move. All is good. And through the breath, we come to the body. Looking into the body, in the inner space of the body, which may appear as dark, black. And now imagining that the inside of the body is made of infinite number of particles, little particles. And they're all full of awareness. So you go in the body, into the darkness of the body, and you feel the aliveness in each part. Starting from the feet, feel that awareness, that consciousness which is there when you touch the feet. Full of aware presence, conscious presence. And coming up through the legs. All these particles in the body are full of consciousness. Bringing up, going to the buttocks, the waist. Each particle is full of alive, conscious presence. Coming up. Coming up to the waist, rising up to the abdomen. Full of awareness, full of conscious presence. To the chest, to the arms, the hands and fingers. All this inner space in the body, it's full of this conscious presence. Going up to the neck and the back, the whole of back is brimming full of this consciousness. Up in the face, the back of the head, and the whole of the head and the hair. Full of this alive conscious presence, full of awareness. Each particle is fully aware. And now extend it. Now go away from your body, go out of the body. Touch the space of your room where you are sitting. Little particles. The space is full of little particles, full of awareness. Everywhere you go out of your room, maybe the window, the air that is outside the room, full of this conscious aliveness. And go away to some even further. Some pond that you remember, some little river or some street that comes to you. Touch and feel the particles full of consciousness that are forming that what you see, full of that awareness. And you are aware of that space, you are aware of that river, you are conscious of that space. And now think about maybe a planet. Go far into the space. And now touch a planet, maybe. See all the particles that you become aware of there, the space that is there, the dark space outside Earth, full of conscious particles, little particles, full of awareness. So everything that I become aware of, I know owing to the presence of this consciousness, which has no limits. It is occupying my body just like space occupies a room or a house, but it's not limited to my body. And I can use this consciousness as a medium to connect with everything in manifestation and unmanifest. I can go far and wide. My body may not travel far and wide, but I, as consciousness, can go far and wide with this ability. There is no limit to consciousness. Each cell of my body, each particle of my being, and each particle of existence is brimming full of this consciousness. I am that. Even those of my loved ones, you can go into them because they also have the same consciousness which has no limits. It stretches into them just like space stretches into the other house next to me. This consciousness stretches into the other persons next to me. So you can send your prayers or healing wishes through this continuity of consciousness. Always wishing everyone well. May every being remain connected with their true essence. May all of them be genuinely happy, joyful, and have a worthy life. It is this consciousness that I must know myself as. Whole and complete in itself. Full of vast potential, limitless possibilities. Nothing is impossible. Coming back to the breath again and again. Nothing more is important. You are alive. No thought is more important. Coming back to the breath, being grateful for this life. And there is so much we can do or have done. Still, so many possibilities. And thanking all the individuals who are there on this journey, at times in our opposition, at times our comrades, and those who chose the role of being our opposition, thanking them because they are the ones who push us forward to this path of continuing progress. So being grateful for those challenges around. Coming back to the breath again, if we get wandered away. And coming into the body, back again. Little awareness particles, full of conscious, brimming presence, right here with you all the time. Whenever you feel ready, slowly you can take your time to open your eyes. So in the beginning, when we do any kind of relaxation or meditation, it may happen for those of us who are not used to, it may happen that we sleep. And because the mind is so worked up, the moment it relaxes, it goes back into sleep. It thinks it's sleep time, right? But that's okay. I think the more regular we become with the practice and the less we are drained in the energy of thoughts and emotions, too much overwhelmed by it, we see that we have energy remaining, and the mind would not just dictate the body to sleep if it is entering into a relaxation. And some of us may already be, having a practice or some sorts, and then it's much better. So it becomes easier with a little bit of practice. But I think it's worth walking this path because otherwise it's just all unconscious acts that we are involved in. And the whole point of being a human being is, can we awaken to be more and more conscious beings in whatever degree possible for us. Yeah. So any thoughts, any reflections, anyone, any questions? Were you able to follow the guidance, the guided of meditation, or maybe it did not make sense? That is also okay. Yeah.
Monica, it was a great experience again. I wanted to ask you if you could share also the vocal guided meditation, just both yesterday's and today's, because yesterday's you have given in the worksheets, the same, because it helps a lot.
Actually, I don't have any vocal guided meditation at the moment, but yeah, let me get back to you. Maybe I figure out something. Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, this will come, I guess, with the recording.
Yeah.
This is this one.
This will come. Yeah. So we were just kind of winding it up. We were finishing with Chitta Shuddhi, where I think Sophie touched upon it, that these breathing exercises, they help us clear the blockage that we get from time to time in our channels. So in Buddhism, there is this concept of bodhicitta, which is bodhi means enlightened, illumined, and chitta means the mind, illumined mind. So the more and more we work like we are working right now, and also at home, like we do inner work, the more and more we cleanse these channels of all the attachments, clinging, grasping, and impurities, we see that a lightness comes in the being. So the mind becomes more light, more conscious, more alive. And again, there is a continuing road. There is no end to this road. But even a little bit of degree, if it makes a difference in my life, I think we are again one drop poison less in this universe. So all of us have that capacity of, the bodhicitta, which is illumined, having an illumined mind, having a mind which is more and more purified and lighter in its essence. And we all deserve that beauty. It's not reserved for a few people, and the others can lie in dirt. It's not possible. So all of us deserve this beauty, and it's only a little bit of effort every day that really makes a lot of difference. So yeah, with that, I think thank you so much for participating. If there are reflections, please do share. And thank you everyone for this opportunity, and also putting so much of effort as you are doing right now. Yeah, Beenaji, you want to share something?
Thank you. No, thank you. It was a beautiful meditation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you, Monica. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much for that.
Thank you, Monica. It's very beautiful.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for participating.
Really feeling light.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.